Okay, guys, we're gonna try this again. Okay, I have some notes and talking points. I was looking into something that was kind of bothering me that I couldn't figure out how to answer the question, or I mean, really, how to even process the question, I guess, and what that question is or topic is on it's sensitive information, so you want to listen to this alone or with headphones. Definitely not around children, probably not necessarily around anyone else. I'll try to edit and be as sensitive as I can with the information, but the nature of what I'm talking about is going to include the topics of offenses, SA offenses, and how, as a juvenile offender, that could come into play later in life. So, specifically in the Summerwell's case, what I was unable to really understand and process, I guess, is, largely because, we weren't really there, and we have to already try to filter so much information and try to make a call on what to believe. And it's so incredibly difficult already. But this is simplified a bit because we can just go with the assumption that it did, just to err on safety. And then more recently, I say that later, but more recently now, because this is after the fact, there's been some admitting and apologizing going on, basically. So I feel better about going ahead and saying I'm going to assume that this happened. I'm really not assuming, because I'm assuming that it happened for the sake of argument, but in reality, I feel comfortable doing that because of the parties involved. They've apparently, allegedly admitted to, they're not trying to deny this is something that happened. That's how I guess I can say it. That being said, okay, so I'm wondering how how do I feel about that? It's pretty easy to know how I'm going to feel about that. So we're going to skip that. I'm not a cheerleader for that. Okay, next. How do you apply that into predicting a crime like this? Or did it have, what kind of involvement could it have played into something like this? This was difficult for me because we have been told that this person wasn't around, the father wasn't around, he was at work, and I do feel that that's the truth, because like the technical footprints are going to reveal this. We're 8 weeks out at this point. Tons of data has had to have been coming back, indicating that at least the timeline given is a holding up. The witnesses that have made statements on where he was, these are holding up. I mean, there's so much that would have had to have gone perfectly that just wouldn't and couldn't, had this not been true, for the father's timeline to be at work, that I don't know. But because we don't know all things, okay, maybe it's possible that something nefarious could have gone on. These are all these things that's gone through my mind. So I've jumped into some research on trying to understand how to apply this not new information, but the information I'm at this point trying to process. And so what I wanted to kind of go ahead and put down on video and just get this end because I want to finish up the video series on the steps taken in the investigation. This one in particular would just fall in the investigation as a separate, like, subset of information. Okay, so I had one file, and it was not necessarily from Department of Justice, but it was simple and easy. I'm going to have to go back in and pull that back up to use, and if I don't record very long, then I probably will do that, but I've got 3 for now. I just want to kind of hit the highlights of, and if I can do that, then maybe I can go back and pull that one from Bar Association. Okay, this is from NCSBY, which is National Center on Sexual Behavior of Youth. The fact sheet, adolescent S offenders. Okay, so this is just really kind of fast and easy. It's going to have kind of like your misconceptions or common misconceptions, and then current evidence that it gives you. Some of the references, of course, Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, a 1999 writing, Crime in the United States, Uniform Crime Reports, 1998, Washington, D.C., U.S. Government Printing Office. And then it looks like another paper written, a 1999 report, Juvenile Offenders and Victims, Washington, D.C. Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, a document, Juvenile Arrest in 2000, Prevention and Violence, International Journal of Offender Therapy and Comparative Criminology, History of S Abusers, Relationship of S History, Denial, and Response Profiles of Adolescent S Perpetrators, Behavior Therapy. This fact sheet was prepared through the National Center of S Behavior of Youth at the Center on Child Abuse and Neglect, University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, and was authorized by Barbara L. Bonner, Ph.D., Mark Chafin, Ph.D., Carrie Pierce, MSW. This project is funded by grant number 01-JR-BX-K002 from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, U.S. Department of Justice. Opinions in this document are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official positions and policies of the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. The University of Oklahoma is an equal opportunity institution. Common misperceptions. Number 1, few sex crimes are committed by adolescents. Current evidence shows ASOs commit a substantial number of S crimes, including 17% of all arrests. 17% of all arrests for S crimes, and approximately a third of all S offenses against children. Wow. It's pretty shocking. Misconception. Common misconception number 2. Only adolescent males commit S offenses. Evidence shows that females under the age of 18 account for 1% of force committed by juveniles and 7% of all juvenile arrests for S offenses, excluding the category of prostitution. Number 3, misconception. ASOs are curious about sexuality and do not commit as serious S crimes. Okay, the real evidence shows that while some illegal S behavior by ASOs is limited, such as touching over the clothes. Other ASOs have extensive aggressive S behavior, including forced, how can I say that? Well, a forced act. Okay. 4. ASOs come from highly dysfunctional families. Evidence shows that there is no specific family profile for ASOs. No unique family pattern has been identified for ASOs. The characteristics of ASO families are diverse and may or may not be considered dysfunctional. 5. ASOs were molested as children. Current evidence. Many ASOs were not sexually victimized as children. The self-reported rates of sexual victimizations of ASOs range from 20 to 55%. Several studies have shown higher rates of self-reported physical abuse rather than S abuse. ASOs need long-term, like 3 to 5 year intensive therapy, like 2 to 5 sessions a week. But evidence shows that many ASOs are successful in much shorter, less intensive programs, and they're seen in outpatient group treatments. Many just meet for once a week, and sometimes 8 weeks. Myth. ASOs should be placed in secure residential treatment facilities, and evidence shows that they can be safely in the community during treatment, that some do need residential placement, but there is some professional consensus that most can be treated on an outpatient basis. Decisions about placement in residential or incarcerated settings should depend on community safety and treatment issues. Myth. ASOs have serious psychological disorders, and evidence shows that many ASOs do not have major psychological problems. Some have serious psychological problems, including conduct disorders, depression, learning disabilities, and they need to be addressed. ASOs should not attend public schools, and evidence shows that ASOs can safely attend school and participate in school activities such as sports, band, and newspaper. A myth is that there are instruments that can determine whether or not an adolescent is at high risk to reoffend, but the evidence shows that there is currently no test that can scientifically validate, not a scientifically validated instrument that can reliably determine if an adolescent will commit a subsequent offense. There are instruments, SOAP Roman number 2, or the ERASOR 2. Those are two developmentally two instruments in development right now to assess with reliability and validity the risk for future offenses by adults. So that's great. If they're a juvenile offender, when they become an adult, will they reoffend? Okay. And then the other misconception is that ASOs are similar in most ways to adult S offenders, and research shows that most ASOs differ from adult S offenders in several ways, and that ASOs are different from adult S offenders in that they have lower recidivism rates, they engage in fewer abusive behaviors over shorter periods of time, and they have less aggressive sexual behavior. Additional information about adolescent S offenders and children with S behavioral problems is available from the National Center on S Behavior of Youth, www.ncsby.org. And then I gave you the resources that were used to put that study together. Okay. Another study that I wanted to look at is, this information is the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Office of S Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registering, and Tracking. And this is the Somap I research brief. And Somap I it is short for S Offender Management, Assessment, and Planning Initiative. Okay, so this is the recidivism of juveniles who commit S offenses. Okay, about Somap, sorry. In 2011, the SMART, and SMART is to do with Adam Walsh. I'll find, let me find that for you. Okay, let me read you about SMART first, and then we'll go back to that. Okay, SMART. The Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act of 2006 authorized the establishment of S Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, and Apprehending, Registration, and Tracking, SMART, office within OJP. SMART is responsible for assisting with implementation of the S Offender Registration and Notification Act, which is SORNA, SORNA, and also for providing assistance to criminal justice professionals across the entire spectrum of S offender management activities needed to ensure public safety. This research brief was provided with the National Criminal Justice Association under grant number 210-DB-BX-KO86, awarded by the Office of S Offender Sentencing, Monitoring, Apprehending, Registration, Tracking, SMART, Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, and conclusions of or recommendations expressed in this research brief are those of the author and contributors and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of SMART, Office of U.S. Department of Justice. There are probably 50 other author notes in the footnotes here that contribute to making, where they pulled some different data from different college, universities, research groups, and things like that. But anyways, okay, so this Somap research brief. Okay, so this was put out by U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs. All right. So about the Somap I, 2011, the SMART office began work on the S Offender Management, Assessment, and Planning Initiative, Somap, a project designated to assess the state and research and practice in S Offender Management. As part of the effort, the SMART office contracted with the National Criminal Justice Association, the NCJA, and a team of subject matter experts to review the literature on S offending and S offender management and development summaries of the research for dissemination of the field. These summaries are available online at http://smart.gov/somapi/index.html, a national inventory of S offender management professionals was also conducted in 2011 to gain insight about promising practices and pressing needs in the field. Finally, a discussion forum involving national experts was held in 2012 for the purpose of reviewing the research summaries and inventory results and refining what is currently known about S offender management. Based on the work carried out under Somap SMART, they have published a research brief, each focusing on a topic covered in the S offending management literature review. Each brief is designed to get the key findings from the literature review into the hands of policymakers and practitioners. Overall, the briefs are intended to advance the ongoing dialogue related to effective interventions for S offenders and provide policymakers and practitioners with trustworthy, up-to-date information they can use to identify what works to combat S offending and prevent S victimization. Juveniles who commit S offenses have come under increasing scrutiny from the public and policymakers over the last 25 years. Previously, the population wasn't seen as a significant public safety threat and instead was viewed as a boys will be boys attitude. However, in a series of studies conducted in the late 1970s and early 1980s that featured retrospective S history interviews with adult S offenders, many adults reported that they began their S offending during adolescence. These findings led practitioners and policymakers to provide more attention on juveniles who commit S offenses as a way to prevent adult S offending. Since the 80s, a significant body of knowledge specific to juveniles who commit has been developed, particularly in relation to the characteristics of these youth and their propensity to reoffend. To accomplish this, researchers employed methodologies very different from those that retrospectively examined the offending behavior of adult S offenders. These methodologies enabled researchers to better understand the experiences, characteristics, and behaviors of juveniles who commit these offenses, including rates and patterns of recidivism. The research brief addresses recidivism of juveniles who commit offenses, and it summarizes what is scientifically known about the topic and identifies policy implications, knowledge gaps, and unresolved controversies that emerge from the extent research and that might serve as a catalyst for future empirical study. Summary of findings. Prospective national youth sample that included juveniles who commit S offenses. The National Youth Survey is an ongoing longitudinal study that began in 1976. The study has followed over time a national representative sample of 1,725 youth who were ages 11 to 17 in 1976, surveying them about their behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs regarding a variety of topics including violence and offending. In the 1992 survey wave, the latest for which relevant S offending data was collected, 6% of the sample reported having committed an S assault, which was defined as youth who reported one S assault during the first 3 waves of data collection. A 2% sample reported having committed a serious S assault, which was defined as a youth who reported 2 or more S assaults during the same time frame. In addition, 70% of those acknowledging an S offense reported the onset to have began prior to age 18. In terms of recidivism, 58% of those youth committing a S assault reported committing a subsequent S assault. Of the serious assaulters, 78% reported committing another serious S assault. Finally, in terms of adult assaults, 10% of those who committed a S assault as a juvenile also committed an S offense. And 17% of those who committed a serious S assault as a juvenile also committed an S offense. Large-scale systematic reviews, including meta-analysis. The average sexual recidivism rates for juveniles who committed S offenses was 5% for those studies with 1 year of follow-up. For 3 or more years, the recidivism rate is 7% for those years of follow-up. A second meta-analysis involved 9 studies of 2,986 juveniles. I'm not sure where they came up with 2,986 of them in this year, because I thought there were only 1,700 in the whole study. But a second meta-analysis involved 9 studies of 2,986 juveniles who committed offense, based on an average follow-up period of 59 months. The study found a recidivism rate of 13% of non-S violent offense. Let's see. A third meta-analysis reviewed 63 studies, a combined sample of 11,219. Okay, that's good. That's a better pool. Juveniles who committed S offenses. Recidivism was measured over a mean follow-up period of 59 months, the same as the previous 2 studies, and the study found a weighted mean recidivism of 7%. Okay. Let's see if I find more studies. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is a graph. It's really kind of hard to read an entire graph, so I'm just going to go through and pull like pertinent information. So what I have here are the tables, and the copyright information on this was pretty like kind of scary, so I didn't want to just like copy it and put it in the video, but maybe I should have found a way to do that. But it's table 1 and table 2, and these are single studies rather than the group studies that I read off before. So these are rates for juveniles who commit the offenses and were released after spending some time in like a residential setting of some kind. So there's a follow-up period where they were able to take a group of children offenders, and then after they were in like a 1 year or 3 year release or 5 year release, they were able to take those groups and study them for offending. So what we have found, one common theme that I have found throughout here is that the offenses, the S offenses, they're the times that they've reoffended for an S crime was around 7 to 13% at times, but it was higher, like 30% for a crime. Like if they had a S crime as a child, then later on for them to commit a crime, a non-S crime, then it was higher, like 30%. I kept seeing that. Okay, so like here's a 5-year follow-up period where they have a sample size of 197 children they followed for 5 years. So for their crimes, they were 50%, 51% they reoffended. Not the S, but just they committed a crime. But 12% of those committed a S crime. All right, that's a 5-year follow-up period. Okay. A pool of 104 children were followed for 3 years in 2004. There was a criminal recidivism percent of 23%. An S recidivism percent of 2%. And then we have a sample size of 110 children. Oh, sorry, scared me to death. 110 children followed in 2001 for a year. And their general, which means all crimes, recidivism percent were 38. And out of that pool of 110, their S recidivism percent was 0. So no S crimes at 1 year. Okay. A group of 148 were followed for 16 years. The general crime information is not available, but the S recidivism percent is 16%. So, let's see. And we have some like at 1 year out, and 4% had reoffended an SA, and then 4% had reoffended, 1% had reoffended an SA. So some do, but what is always much higher is that there's a much higher chance that they, offend with a crime, not necessarily an SA crime. And one thing that we can definitely see is that as a youthful offender, it's not a given. It's not like, okay, 100% they're going to reoffend. And it's definitely, sorry about that. It's definitely that we can see where, they don't reoffend a child. If they do reoffend, what the data is showing is that they reoffend with someone their age. Okay, there's this is Juvenile Justice Fact Sheet. John A. Hunter, PhD from the Institute of Law, Psychiatry, and Public Policy, University of Virginia. Understanding Juvenile S Offenders, Research Findings, and Guidelines for Effective Management and Treatment. Juvenile perpetrated S aggression has been a problem of growing concern in American society over the past decade. Currently, it is estimated that juveniles account for up to 1/5 of the R's and 1/2 of the cases of child molestation committed in the United States each year. The majority of cases of juvenile S aggression appear to involve adolescent male perpetrators. However, a number of clinical studies have shown that females and prepubescent youths who have engaged in S abusive behaviors, juvenile S offending appears to traverse racial and cultural boundaries. Basically, back to the, there is no profile for a particular family or dysfunction that would point to this. A number of factors like casual influences have been identified, and they are believed to help explain the developmental origin of juvenile S offending. Factors have received the most attention to date include maltreatment experiences, exposure to porn, substance abuse, and exposure to aggressive role models. While S aggression may emerge early in developmental process, there's no compelling evidence to suggest that the majority of juvenile S offenders are likely to become adult offenders. The estimated risk of juvenile S offending leading to adult offending may have been exaggerated by an over-reliance on retrospective research studies. Existent longitudinal studies suggest that aggressive behavior in youth is not always continuous, and that juveniles who engage in S aggression frequently cease such behavior by the time they reach adulthood. Clinical characteristics and juvenile S offender subtypes. We have juvenile offenders who S offend against peers or adults. And then we have juvenile offenders who S offend against children. Characteristics common to both groups of juvenile offenders is that they have difficulties with impulse control and judgment. Up to 80% have some diagnosable psychiatric disorder or dysfunction. Perhaps the best controlled study to date, Borden, Henigler, Bask, and Stein, 1990, compared multi-systemic therapy and intensive, multifaceted treatment targeting youth and family characteristics, peer relations, school factors, and neighborhood and community characteristics with individual therapy and outpatient treatment of 16 adolescent S offenders, using rearrest records as a measure of recidivism, S and non-S. The above two groups were compared at a 3-year follow-up interval. Results revealed that youths receiving multisystemic therapy had recidivism rates of lower than 12%. And 25% for non-S offenses. That's just all crimes that they ended up, relapsing into some kind of a crime. They 25% of them offended. Okay. Again, it's just talking about how studies show, and this has been consistent across all of the reports I've read. Studies show that if a child offender is going to commit a crime as an adult, that they have about a 25% chance, about 25% of the times they will commit a crime. And sometimes you've got 7 to 13% is the ones that would commit a S crime. 7 to 13%. So talks about some of the things that go into that, the interface between the criminal justice system and then the treatment centers, timing of assessments, components of assessments, talks about living arrangements, organization and community-based areas of focus. Let's see. Although available data does not suggest the majority of juvenile S offenders are destined to become adult S offenders, legal and mental health intervention is believed by professionals to be important in deterring the continuation of such behavior. The most effective intervention is believed to consist of a combination of legal sanctions, monitoring, and specialized clinical programming. So a multifaceted approach is what they like there. And I tend to agree. So, let's see. So the the other study that I had, it was from, it was just a fact sheet, a quick fact sheet from the Bar Association. I'll probably just skip that because I feel like I've just read so much data, but in the conclusion is what I've learned from this that's so important is that what we always hear is that you cannot rehab a S offender or S deviant, and that particular sickness. But what the studies show is that as a child offender, that isn't the same. The science shows it's not the same. The history, the patterns, and the data shows that reoffending isn't the same. So it's good news as far as that, to know that those offenses aren't going to necessarily doom you for life. It doesn't mean that, you offended, and it certainly doesn't mean you're going to offend your child, because it's showing there that even if you were to reoffend, it's not pointing to that child. Because I think one thing that was brought up was, because I think, we've always learned that some, S offenders have a type, like an age type that they like. And so it was, thought that, well, what if he began offending a child at age 5, and that's his, type. And Summer was now 5. And so studies rule that out, shows that that's not the thing. It's that if they reoffend within their peer group. They're not going to be excited by a child. So it's just the main thing is that a useful offender is altogether a different ball of wax, and part of that means that the recidivism is not 100%, it's not 90%, it's not 80%, it's not 70%. We're talking 7 to 13%. And if they did reoffend, it was most likely in the first 1, 2, or 3 years after first starting that offense. And it wouldn't be with a, underage. It would be, with an adult later on. Once, things grew up. If it happened, but it's, showing that that's not most likely. It looks like with Don's history, that kind of shows us that that's what happened with his situation too. He did have crimes in his adult life. That's been talked about. That most likely falls in with, dealing with some behavior issues, impulse control, things of that nature. And it just really makes all the sense in the world. And showing that brain development continues to align for the better as we grow and correct our behaviors. I believe that's exactly what happened. So, I mean, I feel so much better about that. I feel like we can begin to kind of heal some things. There's definitely some healing that can take place for the victims of this essay, and they can begin to address some of their, you know, these are now adults as well, so, you know, they not only dealt with issues whenever it initially happened, but long-term issues. This is, you know, PTSD type things. So now, you know, that can begin to heal because there's no need to hide about it anymore. It's, you know, out. It's all the reason in the world to address that and get complete healing from it. So those are all really good things. So I'm going to go back into the investigation, and I've got videos 1, 2, and 3 out on it, but there's just so much more, and I'll be looking forward to when I can like have a conversation back and forth with you guys on this. And I mean, I just could not wish that we could find her sooner. Like, I can't believe this is 8 weeks out at this point, but it is, and many children, you know, are missing right now that, you know, and I don't know how any parent could ever find any peace not knowing where their child is. I mean, to lose a child is the most horrific thing, but to lose them in a way where you don't know, you have no way of knowing at all, you know, this is the worst. It is the worst. So, I pray for everyone that's working to put some things together on this case, the search, the investigation, everyone in social media that's touched by it, because I know the effect that it has, the family, everyone, and I really do have hopes still of bringing Summer home safe. But anyways, I hope you guys all have a blessed day, and we'll see you soon.